What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest stars walks onto a daytime talk show expecting a routine interview, and instead finds herself in the middle of a tense exchange that no one in the studio saw coming? Make sure to subscribe to Final Take Files, and like and comment for more talk show coverage. So the moment starts the way these segments usually do. The music fades, the audience is clapping, and Scarlett Johansson walks out smiling, waving to everyone in the crowd. You can hear the energy in the room. People are excited. She hugs a couple of the hosts, sits down at the table, and immediately Whoopi Goldberg jumps in with that familiar tone. Whoopi says, "Scarlett Johansson is here with us today." The audience cheers again. Joy Behar leans forward a little and says, "We're always happy when you stop by." Scarlett laughs lightly. "I'm happy to be here. It's nice to be back in New York for a minute." Sunny Hostin smiles politely and says, "You've been busy, as always." Scarlett nods. "Yeah, it's been a little crazy lately." Whoopi starts with the usual warm-up question. "So everybody's talking about your new project. But before we get into that, because people love this stuff, how has life been lately? You've got a lot going on." Scarlett smiles. "Life is good. I've been juggling work and family like everyone else." Joy chuckles. "You say, like everyone else, but your version of juggling is probably a little more glamorous." The audience laughs. Scarlett shrugs playfully. "Not really. It's mostly just chaos and trying to get kids to eat vegetables." That gets another laugh. The conversation feels relaxed at first. The hosts are asking about filming schedules, travel, balancing work with parenting. Scarlett seems comfortable, answering casually, even joking about how exhausting filming can be. But then Sunny shifts the conversation. And you can feel the tone change just slightly. Sunny leans forward and says, "You know, Scarlett, something that's come up a lot recently in conversations about Hollywood is accountability. Actors using their platform responsibly." Scarlett nods politely. "Sure." Sunny continues, "Because fans really listen to what celebrities say. Sometimes more than politicians." Whoopi glances at Sunny, then back at Scarlett, sensing where this might go. Scarlett says calmly, "Yeah, that's true sometimes." Sunny says, "Do you ever feel pressure about that? About the responsibility that comes with such a big platform?" Scarlett pauses for a second before answering. "Well, I think everybody has their own way of handling that. Some actors are very outspoken politically, some aren't." Joy nods. "That's always been a debate." Sunny says, "Right. But some critics have said that staying neutral can also send a message." You can hear a few murmurs in the audience now. Not loud, but noticeable. Scarlett keeps her composure. "I think people should speak about things they genuinely understand and care about. Otherwise it can feel performative." Joy raises her eyebrows slightly. Sunny responds quickly. "But some people would argue silence can also feel performative." The audience reacts with a quiet, "Oh." Whoopi jumps in with a half-smile. "All right, we're warming up already." Scarlett laughs lightly, but there's a slight tension now. She says, "I wouldn't call it silence. I think it's more about being thoughtful about what you say." Sunny nods, but she doesn't drop the point. "Well, there was a situation a while back where you faced criticism for comments about actors playing certain roles." Scarlett's expression changes slightly. It's subtle, but noticeable. Joy glances at Sunny. The audience quiets. Scarlett says, carefully, "That was a long time ago, and I addressed that." Sunny responds, "You did. But some activists felt the response wasn't complete." Scarlett leans back in her chair a little. "Well, that's their perspective." Whoopi shifts in her seat. "You know what? These conversations can get real complicated real fast." Sunny continues, still calm but firm. "They can. But I think it's important to revisit them because audiences today are paying closer attention than ever." Scarlett smiles politely again, but it's a tighter smile now. "I understand that." Joy looks between them. "But we also have to acknowledge that people grow." Sunny says, "Of course." Scarlett adds, "And sometimes people learn privately rather than publicly." A few audience members clap softly at that. Sunny tilts her head slightly. But when the conversation is public, shouldn't the learning also be public? Another ripple moves through the audience. Whoopi chuckles nervously. Oh boy. Scarlett laughs too, but now there's definitely tension in her voice. I think sometimes the expectation that celebrities must publicly process every personal growth moment can be unrealistic. Joy nods. That's a fair point. Sunny responds, but transparency matters. Scarlett looks at her directly. It does. But so does context. For a moment, nobody speaks. You can feel the atmosphere in the studio tightening. Whoopi taps the table lightly. Okay. This is turning into a full panel debate. The audience laughs nervously. Scarlett tries to steer the conversation back. I actually came here to talk about the film. Joy jumps in quickly. Yes. Let's talk about the movie before we start a whole congressional hearing here. The audience laughs again. But Sunny isn't finished yet. She says, calmly but clearly, before we move on, I just want to ask one thing. Scarlett turns slightly toward her. Sunny says, do you feel today that Hollywood has learned from those debates about representation? The question hangs there. Scarlett pauses longer this time. You can see her thinking carefully about how to answer. Finally she says, I think the industry is evolving. Slowly. Sunny presses gently. But do you feel actors like yourself have a responsibility to lead that change? Scarlett exhales slightly. I think everyone in the industry has responsibility. Joy nods. That's fair. Sunny says, but leading voices carry more weight. Scarlett responds, and sometimes they also carry more criticism, regardless of what they say. The audience reacts again. Whoopi raises both hands. All right, we are definitely getting into it today. The crowd laughs, but the tension at the table is now very real. Scarlett shifts in her seat. Sunny folds her hands calmly. Joy looks like she's half amused and half bracing for what might come next. And Whoopi glances toward the producers off camera for just a split second. Because at this point in the conversation, everyone in the room can feel it. The interview that started out light and friendly is starting to turn into something else entirely. The audience can feel the shift now. What started as a typical celebrity interview has clearly turned into something more serious, and everyone at the table knows it. Scarlett Johansson sits a little straighter in her chair, still composed, but you can see she's choosing her words more carefully now. Whoopi clears her throat lightly and tries to smooth things over. All right, we're gonna keep this moving, because we've got a lot to cover. Joy nods quickly. Yes, we do. But Sunny Hostin looks like she still has something on her mind. Scarlett glances toward Whoopi for a second, almost like she's expecting the conversation to shift back to the film, but Sunny jumps back in. I just want to follow up on something you said. The audience murmurs again. Scarlett gives a polite smile. Okay. Sunny leans slightly forward. You mentioned that actors should speak on things they genuinely understand and care about. Which makes sense. But critics say that sometimes celebrities only engage with issues when it benefits their public image. The studio goes quiet. Joy gives Sunny a sideways look. Scarlett pauses. Well, she says slowly, I can't speak for every celebrity. Sunny replies, but you can speak for yourself. Scarlett nods once. I try to be thoughtful about what I say publicly. I don't want to speak over people who have lived experiences that I don't. Sunny responds quickly. But sometimes not speaking at all can also silence those conversations. A few people in the audience clap lightly. Scarlett notices the reaction. I don't agree that staying thoughtful equals silence. Joy jumps in. This is a complicated topic. Whoopi nods. It always is. But Sunny continues. Let me give you an example, she says. When debates around representation in Hollywood were really heated, there were people asking for actors with huge platforms to speak more directly. Scarlett looks calm but firm now. And there were also people asking actors to step aside and let others speak. The audience reacts again. Sunny nods slowly. True. Scarlett continues, that's why I said it's complicated. Joy leans toward Sunny with a small smile. She's got a point. Sunny doesn't argue with that, but she keeps the conversation going. I'm not saying it's simple, she says. But public figures influence culture whether they want to or not. Scarlett tilts her head slightly. That's fair. Sunny says, so when controversies happen, people want clarity. Scarlett lets out a small breath through her nose, not annoyed exactly, but clearly feeling the weight of the topic. I've addressed controversies when they happen. Sunny raises an eyebrow. But some people say the responses come only after backlash. The audience reacts again, another wave of murmurs. Whoopi immediately lifts a hand. Okay, let's be careful here. Scarlett keeps her composure, but now her tone is a little sharper. Well, that's usually how public conversations work, right? Something happens, people respond, and then everyone talks about it. Joy laughs softly. That's basically the internet. A few audience members laugh. Sunny nods, but she presses again. But the concern some people have is whether those responses feel genuine. Scarlett's smile fades slightly. I can't control how every person interprets my intentions. There's a short silence. Joy looks at Whoopi. Whoopi taps the table lightly again. Look, this is why these discussions are tricky on live television. The audience laughs nervously. Sunny says calmly, I'm not trying to make this uncomfortable. Scarlett responds, I didn't say you were. But the tension is obvious now. Sunny continues, I just think viewers appreciate honesty. Scarlett nods once. So do I. Joy shifts in her chair and tries to redirect things. Let's talk about the movie for a second because... Sunny interrupts gently. We will, I promise. Just one more point. The audience reacts again. Scarlett glances toward Joy briefly, then back to Sunny. Sunny says, do you ever feel that Hollywood sometimes prioritizes image management over real accountability? That question lands harder than the previous ones. You can feel it. Scarlett takes a moment before answering. I think every industry struggles with accountability. Sunny says, but Hollywood has enormous cultural influence. Scarlett nods slowly. Yes, it does. Sunny asks, so do you feel personally accountable when audiences feel hurt by something you've said in the past? The room goes quiet again. Scarlett leans forward slightly now, resting her hands on the table. I think everyone should reflect when people are hurt. Sunny says, and... Scarlett continues, and I've done that. Sunny asks, publicly. Scarlett holds Sunny's gaze. Yes. Joy tries to lighten the moment. You two are having a full courtroom exchange here. Some audience members laugh again. Whoopi chuckles. We might need a judge. But Sunny isn't laughing. She says, I'm just asking the questions viewers ask. Scarlett responds calmly but firmly. And I'm answering them. There's another pause. Then Joy says, all right, let's breathe for a second. The audience claps lightly. Whoopi nods. Good idea. Scarlett smiles faintly again, but it looks more controlled than before. Whoopi turns slightly toward her. So let's pivot for a moment. Tell us about this new film. Scarlett looks relieved for half a second. Thank you. The audience laughs softly. Scarlett starts explaining the project. So the film is about... But Sunny suddenly adds something. And does the film address some of these cultural conversations we're talking about? Scarlett stops mid-sentence. You can see the moment register on her face. The audience reacts immediately. Joy closes her eyes briefly like she saw it coming. Whoopi leans back in her chair. Scarlett slowly turns toward Sunny again. Well, it's primarily an action drama. Sunny nods. But stories often reflect social themes. Scarlett responds, her voice still calm but noticeably firmer now. Yes. But not every film is designed to carry the weight of every cultural conversation. The audience murmurs louder this time. Joy says quietly, all right. Sunny looks thoughtful but continues. I think audiences today expect entertainment to engage with real-world issues. Scarlett answers without hesitation. And sometimes audiences also want entertainment. That line gets a noticeable reaction, applause mixed with murmurs. Whoopi laughs. Well, that's definitely true. Joy points toward Scarlett. She's not wrong. Sunny gives a small smile, but she says one more thing. Still, people hold influential voices to a higher standard. Scarlett leans back now. And that standard can change depending on who's judging. Another ripple moves through the crowd. The tension at the table is now impossible to ignore. Whoopi glances toward the control room again. Joy adjusts her glasses. Sunny sits calmly with her hands folded. Scarlett takes a sip of water from the mug in front of her. And for a few seconds, the conversation stops completely. The audience is quiet. Everyone in the room can feel it. What started as a thoughtful debate is getting closer and closer to a real on-air clash. The silence at the table hangs for a moment after the last exchange. Scarlett Johansson sits back in her chair, hands folded lightly in front of her, trying to keep the conversation calm. But the atmosphere in the studio has definitely changed. Whoopi Goldberg clears her throat. All right, we're having a real conversation today. The audience gives a nervous laugh. Joy Behar glances between Scarlett and Sunny Hostin and says, "This is live television, folks." Scarlett smiles politely, but it's clear she's being more careful now. Sunny looks at her again. "I do appreciate that you're answering these questions," she says calmly. Scarlett nods. "Of course." Sunny continues, "But people watching want to know where influential voices stand." Scarlett exhales slightly. "I understand that." Sunny adds, "Especially when conversations about representation and accountability are still happening in Hollywood." Scarlett responds, "And they should be happening." Joy nods. "That's true." Sunny leans forward a little. "But when someone with a platform stays cautious, some people interpret that as avoiding the issue." Scarlett tilts her head slightly. "I don't see it that way." Sunny asks, "How do you see it?" Scarlett answers calmly, "I try to listen more than I speak when the conversation isn't centered on my experience." A few audience members clap. Sunny responds, "But your voice still carries influence." Scarlett nods. "Yes." "Which is exactly why I try to be careful with it." Joy says, "That's a fair approach." Sunny continues, "But critics have said your past comments about casting and representation still raise questions." The audience murmurs again. Scarlett pauses. "I've addressed that before." Sunny asks directly, "Do you think the criticism was fair?" The audience reacts with a loud, "Oh." Joy leans back slightly. "That's a big question." Scarlett thinks for a moment. "I think the conversation about representation is important." Sunny says, "But do you think the criticism toward you was justified?" Scarlett's smile fades a little. "It's not a simple yes or no." Sunny replies, "Sometimes clarity matters." Scarlett answers calmly, "And sometimes nuance matters." There's another pause at the table. Whoopi leans back slightly, sensing the tension. Scarlett finally speaks again. "I've talked about this issue many times. And honestly, sometimes it feels like no answer is ever enough." A few people in the audience clap again. Sunny responds, "People just want accountability." Scarlett nods once. "I understand that." Then she looks around the table. "But I came here today to talk about a project I'm proud of and the people who worked on it." Whoopi nods quickly. "That's fair." Scarlett continues. "And I'm open to these conversations, but right now it feels less like a discussion and more like I'm being put on trial." The audience reacts loudly, some clapping, some murmuring. Joy raises her eyebrows. Sunny looks slightly surprised but stays calm. "That's not my intention," Sunny says. Scarlett responds quietly, "I hope not." The tension at the table is now impossible to ignore. Whoopi lifts her hands. All right, let's take a breath." But the moment has already landed. The friendly interview has clearly turned into something much more uncomfortable, and everyone in the studio can feel it. Whoopi looks around the table, trying to ease the tension that everyone in the studio can feel. "All right," she says with a small laugh, This is one of those mornings where the conversation goes in a direction nobody planned. The audience chuckles nervously. Joy Behar adjusts her glasses and adds, "Welcome to live television." Scarlett Johansson gives a small smile, but she still looks a little uncomfortable. Sunny Hostin remains calm, sitting with her hands folded on the table. Whoopi turns toward Scarlett. "You're here to talk about the new film, and we do want to give you that moment." Scarlett nods politely. "Thank you, I appreciate that." Joy quickly jumps in. "So tell everyone when the movie is coming out." Scarlett starts to answer. "It's coming out next month, and it was a really amazing project to work on." But the energy at the table still feels off. Even the audience seems quieter than earlier. Scarlett gives a brief explanation about the film, thanking the cast and crew, but the segment clearly doesn't return to the relaxed tone it had at the beginning. After about a minute, Whoopi looks toward the camera. "All right, we're going to take a quick break." The audience claps as the show cuts to commercial. But according to people in the studio, the moment the cameras stopped rolling, things were still tense. Scarlett reportedly stood up from the table almost immediately. Some audience members say she spoke briefly with the producers off-camera while the hosts stayed seated. Joy appeared to be talking quietly with Whoopi, while Sunny remained at the table. When the show returned from break, Scarlett Johansson was no longer sitting at the panel. Whoopi addressed it quickly. "Well, Scarlett had to step out, but we appreciate her stopping by today." The audience reacted with a mix of applause and confused murmurs. The panel then moved on to the next topic, but viewers at home had already noticed something unusual happened. Within minutes, clips of the exchange started spreading across social media. On X, Instagram, and TikTok, people began sharing the moment Scarlett said the interview felt like a cross-examination. Some viewers supported Scarlett, saying the interview had turned unnecessarily confrontational. Others defended Sunny, saying she was asking questions that many viewers were already thinking. Clips of the tense exchange racked up hundreds of thousands of views in just a few hours. Some users wrote things like, "Scarlett handled that with a lot of patience." Others posted, "Sunny was just doing her job asking real questions." The debate quickly spread across entertainment blogs and talk show commentary channels. Several media outlets highlighted the moment when the audience reacted with loud "ohs" after Sunny's direct questions. By the end of the day, the segment had become one of the most talked about daytime TV moments online. Neither Scarlett Johansson nor Sunny Hostin publicly commented about the exchange after the show aired. But viewers clearly had plenty to say. And that's where we want to hear from you. Do you think the questions were fair? Or do you think the interview crossed the line? Share your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Final Take Files for more real talk show stories and behind-the-scenes moments like this.